This is episode 102 of The Variety Artist. This is John Abrams, your host and that guy that interviews successful variety artists from around the world every single week. The nominees for Stage Magician of the Year by the Academy of Magical Arts were just announced. And guess who was nominated? No, it wasn't me. It's my guest. She was nominated again. Yay! She's a performer, a mom, a vaudeville artist, but most of all, she's amazing. Get to know her a little better. Enjoy the show.
Fun fact number 554. John's favorite animal is a giraffe.
Welcome to The Variety Artist, providing aspiring artists and entertainers with in-depth discussions from top performers from all over the world. So get ready to book some gigs, make some money, and have some fun with your host, John Abrams.
She made history by being the only non-magician ever to be nominated for the Magic Castle Awards. She mixes classic vaudeville tricks with a theatrical, seductive spin. She produces the only all-female variety show in Los Angeles called Women in Vaudeville. Variety artist, I give you Lindsay Benner. How's it going, Lindsay?
It's going great. How are you, John?
It's going pretty good. Now, you're right down the street from me, right?
Yeah, not too far.
Kind of. LA, Orange County, right next to each other.
Mm-hmm.
Now, before we get into your career, something happened in November that's kind of interesting, huh?
Very interesting. It's just a little thing.
And what would that be?
I gave birth to a little boy.
What is his name?
His name is Cosmo Benjamin Dossman.
Say it again?
Cosmo Benjamin Dossman. That's his full name. Don't wear it out. His name's Cosmo. He's just an absolute doll of a little boy. He's so sweet. I'm totally in love.
Wow. Has that changed? It's got to change your household dynamic, right?
100%. Absolutely. I mean, I have a 2-year-old as well, named Poe. Poesis is his full name, but we call him Poe for short and simplicity. Yeah, they're children. They're insane. I hate children. So it's really an adjustment for me.
Except for your own, I'm sure.
It depends on the day, John. It depends on the day. No, I mean, there is nothing better than a 2-year-old throwing her arms around you and loving you. That's just the best ever. And little Cosmo sleeps through the night. So I am becoming a better human being by the day because of that. Poe did not. So I was a bit shell-shocked for the first year of his life. But now we're cooking. We're a family of 4 now, and it's really great. Cosmo brought a lot of extra stability and presence into our life, and I'm very grateful, and I'm totally in love with him. He's super awesome.
So do you think that's it? Or
yes. Yes. Very intentionally, that's it.
Okay.
2, I think 2 is enough. 3 would kill me.
Now, one of the questions that a lot of my female listeners have that they've asked us before is, how do you balance the motherhood with career? Ain't
that a thing? It's so annoying, John.
Yeah.
It's so annoying because that is more, you're not going to ask that to a father as readily as you ask to a mother because, the father has useless nipples. That's part of the.
Wait, that's what you think?
No, it's true. Actually, no. Scientifically, men can. They just don't try hard enough, and that's the wage gap issue here. Men could lactate, but they don't. So that's something I want to talk about and spread the word. It's one of my. I've had to change my life a lot around having small children. I'm breastfeeding, and I can't. If I leave the household, it's a lot more traumatic at this stage of my 2.5-month-old son's life than it is if my husband leaves. I used to travel a ton, and now I can't. And I live in Los Angeles where there's work, but I got most of my work as a variety artist traveling because we're so saturated here. This has been my experience. Maybe other people have had a different experience. And if you have, teach me your ways. Local gigs in Los Angeles, I haven't found them to be as lucrative as gigs away from Los Angeles because
Right.
we're so saturated with entertainers here. So I love that we are saturated with entertainers here because it's a beautiful community, but it means most of the work that I used to get, I would travel for. I was big in the college market. I had other variety gigs all over the place that I would book that would require me being away from home for weeks at a time. And I
Right.
can't really do that anymore. So I'm working on the transition right now. I'm so needed at home with my children that I just do whatever I can locally, and that's been enough. I'm not a single parent. If I was a single parent, it'd be a different thing. But both me and my husband are bringing in support system money. So that's how I do it. It's a team effort. And I think as soon as the kids are a bit older and don't need me as much, I will be traveling more and doing more out of the house. But for now, I have to be closer to home. I just take whatever gigs I can that are close by,
Sure.
And I think for each person that answer is not the same. Some people would just want to quit and just be a full-time parent, and that would drive me insane because I hate children.
Same time you said that. Oh.
I love my boys, but I'm not going to be in a childcare profession anytime soon. Let's just put it that way, John.
I know I'm a children's performer, so I have to love kids. Because when I first started doing this, I really didn't like kids at all.
Oh, interesting.
Then I started doing kids shows, and I really grew an affinity towards children.
Yeah, I think I'll get there, John. I'm new. I'm new at this, and I just getting them in the car seat. If he doesn't want to get in the car seat, I can't tell you something I hate more than having to force a child in a car seat. It just makes me hate children.
Oh no, 3
times. This is going to be the theme, right? This is my focus.
Let's get off the family thing then. Let's talk performance.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. Totally fine. For people who have not seen you, what does your act look like?
I do a couple different things now. I think the thing that I'm most well known for at the castle and in the magic community is the Book of Love, which is a silent comedy. It's the feeling of it, and I feel like the look of it is kind of like if Lucille Ball and Charlie Chaplin had a love child who likes to juggle. Mm-hmm. It's got this old school feel to it. I intended it to look kind of like a silent film. It has chapters like a silent film, but it's in this book. And so I wear a red dress and kind of have a 40s hairstyle. So it's got this vintage feel to it, and it's silent comedy, definitely inspired by silent films.
It's fun. It's funny. But I did notice also that it's real character based.
Yeah.
I'm talking to you now, and I'm getting a little feel for your personality, which is totally different than your personality on stage, which a lot of us do.
Sure.
Is that something that came organically, or did you specifically create this character, or how did that come about?
I think the character came about through a photo shoot that I did. I had a friend who was a great photographer, Sequoia Emanuel. We did this photo shoot, and my friend Ashley did my makeup, and I had never worn fake eyelashes before. I didn't really understand how they worked. She just did me up like I would never do myself up because I'm kind of a Berkeley hippie girl.
Okay.
I had gone to acting class and acting school, and I'd learned a bit about stage makeup, but I didn't really, I wouldn't have necessarily just done that to myself. They dressed me up, they took pictures of me, and I mugged for the camera. And then when I saw these photos, I saw this character that I hadn't known before. And I think that showed me something in myself that I didn't know was there, and that I wanted to know more. It's like I saw it staring at me, and I was like, I want to know more about that girl. I want to see her. She seems awesome.
Yeah. So then when you created that character and you found it, did you create the Book of Love after that?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, it was all kind of fluidly together that it was happening. I saw those photos. Those are my main promotional photos that I started using. I was doing street shows at the time. I didn't have a stage show yet. I was always wearing a red dress, but I was wearing a red dress, and you do what you see when you're new at something. So I was like wearing a red dress and being very masculine in my street shows.
Wait, who are you copying there? Who has a red dress and is masculine?
No one has a red dress, but I would wear the red dress and then I would kind of copy the other male street performers that I saw.
Oh, I see.
I wasn't thinking to myself, oh, I'm going to copy what they're doing, because that's terribly rude to do. When you're learning how to street perform, it's such a terrifying thing to do. You're just grasping for whatever might work in that moment. You're just looking for a life raft. If I saw something work that, this other guy did right before me, I'll try that.
Yeah.
What's going to make the audience stay? I don't know. I'm a beginner. What's funny is when I was first street performing, I think within the first year, because I was so terrified, something happens to me when I get really terrified. I slip into an English accent without any intention or awareness that I'm in an English accent. And so I would have other street performers come up to me and make fun of me for it afterwards. And I was like, I did not know I was doing that.
What a strange affliction.
I'm like trying to be someone I'm not, because I'm just that scared.
What made you take that act to the Magic Castle, being as that act has no magic in it?
Yeah, well, I mean, eventually I put that act together as a stage. I put together the stage act. I was doing it at burlesque shows, and so I was definitely embracing my feminine more. So I was doing it at burlesque shows just to get out of my house. Burlesque shows do well to have a variety act in them, to just kind of break it up a bit. And so I was doing that act at these variety shows, and it was going super well. A magician had been producing these burlesque shows. His name is Brian Glicker. Mm-hmm. He just loved my act, and he invited his friend Max Maven to come see the show, because he just thought I should be booked at the Magic Castle. Because at the Palace, on the Palace stage, which is the largest stage at the Magic Castle, they will have one non-magician. Sometimes it will be all magicians, but sometimes they will have like a ventriloquist or a juggler or a hoop artist, or, they'll have at least one variety act in there. That's the one place that we're allowed to be in the Magic Castle. Uh-huh. When Max saw my act, he booked me to be at the Magic Castle. I was just a street performer before and trying to break into the acting world in Los Angeles at the time. And then when Max booked me at the castle, that was the beginning of a whole other realm of my career that I just adore. I really adore.
So that was kind of the turning point when you started doing more theaters and things?
Yeah, absolutely. I've always kind of been better at being on stage. I was never really fit for street performing personality-wise, or, it was always very terrifying to me, and I never really looked forward to doing it. I was looking for a way out because I knew how to do it and I was all right at it. I made money doing it, doing street performing, I mean. It was hard for me to transition because it was what I knew. This was sort of my way into a different world, and it's what led me to create a full silent show that I ended up touring in the college market. That was sort of my way out of street performing.
A silent act is brilliant because you can tour it all around the world, right?
My intention when I went and did the Edinburgh Fringe was to get introduced to the European community, but that would require having people come to your show. And that was something that I had a hard time figuring out how to do when there were 4,000 shows.
It sounds like certain things that you're terrified or you don't enjoy, you've jumped in and faced it full force, like having kids, street performing.
You're an observant creature. That I see why you're the one doing this podcast. Yeah, absolutely. That's I call it cannonballing. I just completely cannonball. It's messy and it's not exactly very well thought out, and it might even hurt a little bit. But I'm fully immersed, and I know at least I'm in the water. At least I'm there. Better than not jumping at all. I can't say that it's the most graceful or thought out approach. Sometimes it's the only way I'll actually do it. If I think about it too much, then I'll get too scared and I won't do it.
Yeah, but when you're done with it, you're glad you did it, right? It's like going to the gym.
Absolutely.
Like, I don't want to go to the gym. I don't want to go to the gym. I don't want to exercise. But then when you're done, you're like, oh, I thank goodness I went to the gym.
I mean, yeah, all I really want to do is just hang out on my couch and binge watch shows, So that's if I allow that to be my main motivation of what I want to do,
Yeah, I can't find anybody to pay me for that.
I know, it's so rough. It's rough, isn't it, John?
Being as you've toured a bunch of colleges and things, have you seen some different cultures, and have some different cultures reacted differently to your act?
I don't know. Something that I found fascinating about once I got a show like The Book of Love, it has this very universal theme, and the character is very lovable in this
She's a very likable character.
she's a very likable character. I think she's very recognizable in any community. Any community can identify with who that person is in their life,
Mm-hmm.
or who that person is in themselves.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, I think, the cool clown part of it, that I love about clown and character like that, is that if it's doing its job, if it's really working, it's because it's tapping into something that's already inside our human experience. And I think that's kind of what I feel like I tapped into with the Book of Love a little bit. And so I feel like because of that, it has a pretty universal appeal, and it has a pretty wide range of appeal to different ages as well, which I find really cool.
Yeah.
There are certain things, of course, that different cultures like more or are less into, but I find that it has a pretty universal appeal.
Well, this is a little bit of an aside, but not only did you tap into the character that people are familiar with within themselves, it's also a character that a lot of us wish we knew that person.
Oh, interesting.
We hope we know that person. So when that person comes alive on stage, we go, oh, this is a person I wish I knew.
Sure. Interesting. I like hearing that. That's awesome.
It is. It's true. So I noticed you had a lot of acts that were 45-minute acts and 60-minute acts. But I also noticed you have a number of acts that are 3 minutes long, 7 minutes long, 15 minutes long. Is this also by design?
Absolutely. Yeah. Because all the different cabaret shows require different times, and also if you're going to work in a comedy club, you need to have different times, which comedians have very easily, but it's a little trickier as a variety artist.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's important to have lots of different sizes of acts that you can apply to where it needs to be.
Yeah, I think one of the mistakes that a lot of people make, and I've done it myself, you take your 45-minute show and someone says, oh, I need 11 minutes. You try to take your 45-minute show and put it in an 11-minute spot. It's not as powerful.
Or you're like, this is 11 minutes. And then you come off the stage and you've been on stage for 20 minutes. And then they never hire you again.
Someone in the back is doing the across the neck sign. Hold it, stop.
Yeah.
All right, so let's switch gears a little bit. I Googled famous vaudeville performers, and out of about 25, only 2 were women. One was Judy Garland. And of course, we all know Judy Garland. And then one was Pert Kelton. I guess she was the original Alice on The Honeymooners.
Oh, cool.
And those were the only 2 that I saw. So what's the deal with that? I saw Mickey Rooney, Buster Keaton. I mean, we all know all the men. What's the deal?
You got like Gracie Allen, I think should have maybe come up there.
Yeah.
Lucille Ball, of course, is the big name. She would be a clown opener for Ricky's big band shows, and that's where they kind of got the idea for doing the sitcom. And then you got Carol Burnett. I've looked at all of the different vaudeville documentaries that I could get my hands on, and the thing with old vaudeville is they didn't document it a lot. No one really wrote it down.
So that's why your TV characters are more well known. Like
Exactly. All the really big names were men, and I can't say exactly why. I think part of it was they were incredible. So why not?
It was also a different time back then.
Here's the thing. I think that the more we get women who are able to have families and be professionals, then we're going to see more women doing stuff. But I think that question that you asked at the beginning of how do you do both? And it's like, that's part of the reason women don't make the same amount that men do, because we have to take time off. And when you take time off, you're not taking time off. You're actually working a lot more than you necessarily were in a full-time job, but you have to take a break.
You're not furthering your career.
Right. You see these guys get to kind of go and continue being themselves. They can have children. There's no hitch in their giddy up. They don't have to shift their identity on the level that women do. And that still is the case. in Iceland, they're offering paid maternity and paternity leave for the first part of the child's life. And it's only for the first part of the child's life. So the men can take time off, but only for that first part of the child's life. And that starts a culture of both men and women doing the same, having the same amount of time to be with the children.
Mm-hmm.
And so there isn't just an expectation of like, well, you're the mom, you do all the stuff. It's like, oh no, the dads are there too, and you can both work out what you want to do together.
I like that idea.
Mm-hmm.
When my kids were little, that's one of the reasons I switched from doing weekend events to doing school assemblies.
Sure.
So I could spend the weekdays with my kids.
Good choice.
And I don't know how men do that, how they get up at 8 a.m. and leave for work and don't get home till 5 or 6 at night.
I know. It's tough.
And miss their children's entire childhood.
I was listening to Tina Fey do an interview, and she was gone from 5 a.m. till 9 p.m. for a period of time when she was shooting that film, or that, not the film, that the 30 Rock. That just sounds, I mean, it's what you got to do when you're the boss and you're shooting your own television show, but that's intense. That's an intense amount of time to be away from your kid, you know?
I guess I'd like to figure out how that problem works. If someone would give me a TV show, I'll tell you.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind having that problem to solve for sure. Yeah.
All right, so what is Women in Vaudeville?
Women in Vaudeville is an all-female variety show in Los Angeles at the Bob Baker Marionette Theater.
Mm-hmm.
That has been a show that's been pretty much monthly, except for when I'm having babies, for the last 2 years. So we did the show, my first show that we did, which we thought was just going to be a one-off, sold out and went really well. So we decided to try it monthly, and it's been going on ever since. But I found out that I was pregnant with Poe, my first child, a week before our first Women in Vaudeville. That was super special, actually, because it meant every month you saw me get a little bigger until literally the month that I gave birth. I did my final Women in Vaudeville of that year, December 9th or something, and then I gave birth on December 30th.
Wow.
That was really cool. And then we got back up and running the following March, and then about a year later, I got pregnant again.
Did that change your performances? Did you use that in your performance, or how did that?
I loved it. It was so fun, especially because it's my show. So I didn't have to try and, I stopped doing Book of Love when I started showing in any real capacity, because that just felt weird to try and do that show. People were like, no, it'd be funny. I'm like, no, it's not.
Yeah, it might be funny. I was thinking the same thing.
To me, it's not. No, that's not funny, because that character is such a, it's this flirtatious, trying to find love character, and to me, that's not the energy that you're in when you're already pregnant. When you're pregnant, that is, you do not feel flirtatious. Maybe, but no. Like, it just, for me at least, that was not where I was feeling. I was feeling very much like I just wanted to have control to do what I wanted to do when I wanted to do it. So Marawa, the amazing Marawa, brought me to this really fun place called Slauson Super Mall. It's this really great place that has jumpsuits. I would assume that it's more for like pop singers or strippers or, people who are like really needing to have some pizzazz on stage.
Yeah.
And so I got these jumpsuits that with rhinestones, and one of them like with the belly exposed, right? And so I had a really wonderful time putting my outfits together where my belly would be exposed in these really like very sexy-ish, jumpsuits. I would have songs that would accentuate, my humps, and I would come out with these sparkly jumpsuits, and it was fun. I had a total blast putting all that stuff together. So I put together acts specifically for being pregnant, because you can, as a variety artist, at least this has been my experience, and I don't think I'm alone, that once you find something that works, you really stick with it.
Oh yeah.
And you don't really have an opportunity to make new material, because it has to be professional. It has to be really good. So you just do the stuff that works.
Right.
So having this show has really been a really great opportunity to just create whatever I want and have an excuse and have a deadline to create new material and new acts.
Well, that's perfect. The perfect environment, and you're creating stuff that might work. Great.
Yeah, exactly. You never know. I think I got one of my favorite acts that as a variety artist feels very new, but I've actually been doing it for about 4 years now.
Brand new.
Brand new, brand spanking new. So it's now a classic one that I do, but some people haven't seen it yet. It's a straitjacket escape act that's not at all about the escape. It's all about the lip sync that I do while being in the straitjacket to the song, the Alicia Keys song, No One. I'm just insane in it. And that came from working with Stephen Haves. He had this clown workshop, and he did a big party of lip syncing as a clown. I used that opportunity to try out this routine that I'd always thought about doing, and it was all for fun, and that's the best environment, I think, to create something new in. And then that became my new favorite routine. That it was requested at Moisture Fest above Book of Love, which was nice. When you create something that works as well as my show, Book of Love,
as you tried and true.
Right. And then to have them say, no, do that new thing that we saw. That was very exciting.
Oh, wow.
That was exciting to feel like, oh, great. I am not just a one-trick pony. That's nice.
All right, we're going to switch over to the variety artist's favorite game, fact, or something John just made up. Sound like fun?
Yes.
Is it fact? Or is it something John just made up?
All right, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to say a headline, and you're going to tell me whether it's true or not. And if it is true, tell me a little more about it.
Okay.
Here we go. First headline. Lindsay's wedding was featured in the New York Times.
True.
True?
Yes.
Why? How? What?
Well, what happened was my dad he's a very big fan of the wedding section, the romance section, and would always read those articles every Sunday. Before we got married, he entered our story into the New York Times. He entered our story in there, and they were gonna include us in just a little blurb. And then I think eventually the editor thought our story was interesting enough to do a front page of the romance of the, I don't know what, the marriage section or whatever.
Yeah.
The romance section, or what, I don't know. I think they cover a particularly interesting wedding story every week. And so we were featured on the front page. It's very exciting. The story ended up getting picked up. People were tweeting it, and this big golf professional, famous golf person who has millions of followers, tweeted it like, what a story. And
well, what is the interesting story?
It was how Dan and I got together, and just I think it was interesting to them. Oh, let's see. It was interesting. It was kind of like,
wait, give us the story.
Okay.
What's interesting about it? What is it?
What is it? Well, so it's such a long story.
That's okay. We have time.
Okay. So Dan and I had, when people ask how we met, it was a little weird because I was sitting on the lap of the guy I was dating at the time. We had kind of a across the room love at first sight kind of a moment at this party. I mean, the backstory of the guy I was dating at the time, it was dating. We weren't officially together. It wasn't we weren't boyfriend and girlfriend, but I had wanted to be more serious with this other guy, but he wasn't really into that. So I was open, but I wasn't completely available, if that makes sense.
Well, you were in his lap too.
I was on his lap. Yeah, I was sitting on his lap. But there was Dan. He was a pretty big Burning Man artist, my husband. He was one of the major artists that people revered at Burning Man. He did some of the largest scale metal art sculptures and huge explosions. And I had only been to Burning Man one time in 2005 before I met Dan, my now husband. I had seen this sculpture that made me weep. It was such a beautiful story in a sculpture. It was this, I think she must have been 40-foot tall woman with her arms outstretched, walking forward. And next to her was this child also walking forward with their arms outstretched. there was liquid fire pouring from the mother's hand into the child's hand and collecting in a pool of fire on the ground. And then they had water pouring out of their other hands. And then their footprints were liquid fire. And this was like in the middle of the desert. It was so powerful and so beautiful. And it was called The Passage. I was, 24 at the time when I saw that. And I was out and I just saw it and I wept. And fast forward, I'm sitting on the lap of the guy I'm dating, and he says, "Hey, that's the guy that made that sculpture."
Ah.
And so I was like, whoa. Dan looked up at us and he said, "Oh, you guys look so great." And I looked at him and I said, "Hey, you were the guy who made that." He tells me, "You're the guy that made that sculpture. That really meant a lot to me." And he Dan just, I don't know it's hard to describe, but his energy just zeroed in on me. And he just looked me in the eye and he got up and he walked over to me and never stopped eye contact.
Wow. I
had never met someone, our gaze just met, and I didn't need to blink. I didn't need to look away. It was this powerful connection. And that for Dan, he was clear, like that was love at first sight. He called his mom the next morning and he said, "I've met the woman I'm going to marry."
Oh.
And I was a little bit more confused. I was 28. He had just turned 40, so I was kind of like, I don't know if this is, I don't know, this seems a little crazy.
Yeah.
Not what I had envisioned. And then we got each other's information. That night, he kind of made it clear that he was like, I made him laugh. Or no, I didn't even make him laugh. I made a joke. And he just looked at me and he said, "Have I really found you?" And I was like, whoa, this is, whoa. Yeah, he doesn't, he's still to this day, he doesn't really laugh out loud, which is such a funny thing for someone who's
he's like, "Wait, I'm laughing on the inside."
Yeah. Oh, he's not, there's some people who just aren't big laughers. And he's one of those people who just it's not a very big laugher. And so when I get him, it's really great. Then we went on the next time he was living in the Bay Area. We had met in Los Angeles. And so when I went up to the Bay Area, we hung out for a date that I wasn't really sure was a date because I'm naive about that, or I used to be. But it was a date and it lasted for 6 hours, and we were just really connected. On our third date, it was like, that's okay. That's it. That's it. That's it. But I had to let the guy I was dating, whose lap I had been sitting on when I first met Dan, I had to let him know that I was moving on. And at that point, that guy who I had, really wanted to be together with before I met Dan, he, of course, as soon as he figured out that I was about to go and have this relationship with Dan, he started pulling on me and, "No, I'll be together with you." And, all these things that I had sort of wanted to hear for a long time. And so,
yeah, of course now.
Of course, boys. What are you going to do? Yeah. And so I ended up having a really rough time because I was like falling in love with Dan, but I was also still pretty attached to, what it could have been with this other guy. So I ended up dating this other guy. Like the other guy, I was like, all right, I got to try it out with this guy first, Dan, before I can fully, because I could tell with Dan, this was going to be marriage and children.
You could feel it, huh?
I could feel it. And so I was like, I don't know, I'm 28. I don't know if I'm ready for that. So I ended up being with this guy, and Dan was like, all right, well, we can't be in contact because this is too crazy for me. And I said, I totally understand. And, I was trying it out with this other guy. And then I got this text from him that was just this one comma.
Oh no. Big long text with one comma?
No, it was just this text that just was a comma.
Oh, just a comma.
It was just a comma. It was weird. It was like this code that I understood. I got it, it was this sweet romantic code of just, look, I'm here. It's on pause, but I'm here. It took me a little bit, but then I just kept thinking about him and it got stronger. And so then I sent him a text back with just all these commas, just tons and tons of commas. Mm-hmm. it all crescendoed into this crazy weekend that actually, it's funny that I'm telling the story now because it's almost Valentine's Day. And that's exactly when this was 10 years ago. And the day before Valentine's Day, Dan was going to come see me. I was performing at the Magic Castle that week because Book of Love is perfect for Valentine's Day.
Mm-hmm.
If there are any bookers out there, just so you know. The day before Valentine's Day, Dan came to see me, and he was in the middle of doing a big welding project for the same people who do big festivals down south. So the guys who do is the Do Lab. So it's the guys who do Lightning in a Bottle, which is a pretty big festival down here. So he was doing a big welding project for them. Actually showed up to the Magic Castle wearing coveralls. They were so sweet. They put a coat and tie on him and gave him shoes and like let him in, which I don't think they would ever do today.
They do have a jacket and tie.
They do, but I don't know if they would have let him. I mean, he came in his coveralls that had like burnt holes in it from welding. I mean,
he came in singing YMCA.
I know. He's seriously, I don't know. But anyway, they let him in. And when we see each other, this is the first night he's ever seeing me perform as well. And then we see each other and we just melt into each other. I realized, I'm like, that's it. I got to break up with this guy. And he had actually just been working at that event that was where my boyfriend at the time was also working. So they worked together. Oh, it was just crescendoed into this crazy, they're working together. They're having long conversations. I'm talking to Dan. Dan's coming to see me. I didn't tell him that I didn't tell my boyfriend that he was coming to see me. It became this big dramatic thing. And that was the impetus of like, okay, well, we got to break up.
You have to make a choice, right? It's time. Make a choice right now.
And Dan laid it out for me. He's like, Lindsay, I don't know what you're doing with this guy, man. Why are you in a relationship? You're in a relationship to get serious, have kids, like, what are you doing? And I realized, I'm like, yeah, you're right. This is silly. This is so silly. This guy is not the guy for me. It's Dan. So I broke up with him while I was giving Dan a ride back to our friend's house where he was going to stay. And then my boyfriend called me. I broke up with him in the car. Right as I hung up the phone after I broke up with him, Dan just looked over at me and he said, "Can we go home now?" Oh. So I took him home and we were basically engaged that night. And wow. It's been love ever since. Oh.
So your dad wrote that story to the New York Times?
I don't know if he quite wrote that story, but he wrote, I'm a professional juggler. Dan is a professional artist, sculptor, Burning Man, guy. I think that intrigued them enough to then send a reporter to us to learn more about our story. And that's what ended up in the New York Times. So that's how it ended up there. Yeah.
All right. So that was one headline. Only 413 to go. And
okay,
we'll
great. Fabulous.
All right, next headline. Lindsay's already thinking of ways to put her new child in one of the acts.
No, I hate children.
4.
Why would I want to include a child in my act? No. I actually did have Poe in my Mother's Day show that I did. My first Mother's Day show as a mother. I strapped into me and did this big opening where I juggled some balls, and then I grabbed 3 knives, and I got the audience to clap, 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 and I got ready to juggle the knives, and then no, of course I didn't, and then shamed everyone for not stopping me.
Your child there.
Yeah, I had him strapped to my chest and I was about to juggle knives, and everyone was just like, It's cute.
I think about 20 years ago, I was hosting a show as a kind of nerdy looking guy, this nerd character that I do. And I brought my daughter at the time, who's now 27. She was maybe 5-6 years old. And I dressed her up as the funny little nerdy guy. And she actually did an intro. I thought it was cute. I don't know if the audience did or not, but I don't really care.
Yeah, they probably did. Sounds awesome.
All right, next one. Lindsay's nickname when she was a kid was Spud.
Correct.
Why is that?
I think I don't think every little girl goes through this phase, but certainly a few of us maybe did, where we wanted to be dogs. Like literally I wanted to be a dog. Like we had these cans of beef stew and I would call it dog food. And it was during the time when Spud McKenzie, the Budweiser dog, was very popular.
Oh, yeah.
So my brother just started calling me Spud after the Spud McKenzie dog.
Oh, do you get flashbacks when you walk into Target?
I hadn't thought of that, but that's...
All right, next one. And last one. Lindsay went to Northern California flute camp.
I did indeed. I did go to flute camp.
Do you actually play the flute?
I do. I went to music school from 5th to 8th grade and was in junior Bach competitions. And I can still pick up a flute and play it as if I'm some concert flautist, but I barely ever do anymore. I've been thinking about trying to get it back into my life in a hobby format, but I haven't managed to.
That was fact. Or something John just made up.
All right, we're going to go for some fan questions. Would you like some fan questions?
Of course I would. I didn't know I had fans. Awesome.
Yes. Every time I interview somebody new, I put on my Facebook group that you can ask questions of me, and I will ask those questions to our guests. So here you are.
Here I am.
Suzanne Herring, a.k.a. Schmoozy, says, love me some Lindsay Benner. Screenwriter, TV producer, and magician Michael King says, a very talented person indeed.
Aww.
That was their questions. That's it.
Those are easy.
Here's a real question. Louis Fox, the one-man sideshow out of Seattle, says, last time I saw your act about 5 years ago at the Moisture Fest in Seattle, you did the kiss on the cheek and then turn your head so the guy kisses you on the lips, accidentally, parentheses.
Classic.
Do you still do it? And if you do, have you felt any pressure to drop the bit recently because of this culture that we live in?
Yeah, absolutely. I did drop it a couple years ago. Did it very intentionally because it felt, even though it's a wonderful button, it would always get the biggest. It was like a perfect way to end the show. Sure. Because it's just surprising. And, I go through this book of love and we go through going on our first date and falling in love. And, by the end of the act with me and my volunteer, we've been through a lot together. So it always felt like it was okay to just surprise him with a little peck on the lips. Yeah. But in reality, it's not okay. He didn't say yes. I'm switching it up. I took it out finally after I had this feeling. It upset me that I had this feeling, and I thought, oh, I get it. Okay, I got to take it out. Yeah. And the feeling was that I had a particularly difficult volunteer. And normally I have wonderful volunteers. That's like the norm, is having great volunteers. I'm good at picking them, and people tend to like my character and not want to pick on me that much. So I have very good volunteer experiences. But occasionally, one in 100 are difficult.
Yeah, we've all had them, by the way.
Yeah, in those moments, you try and, you have to be very dominant, especially when you're not used to, I'm not used to having to, I'm very dominant. I'm very clear that I'm in charge, and most people don't question that. But when they do question that, you can get a little intense about it, right? Or at least I could get a little intense about it. So I just got to that point in the show where I was about to kiss him. Yeah. Do the fake kiss. And I remember it was like this, the feeling behind it was not a good feeling, where I couldn't wait to just get him. It was like this, it was this dominant, I don't know what the word is for it, but I didn't like how it felt. And I realized that if that could ever be where it's coming from, where I'm just trying to pull one over on him and it's this intimate moment, then that's icky. That's not cool. Yeah. So I realized, okay, I got to take it out. I don't want that even to be an option for me. So I took it out.
No, I think that's a great lesson for everybody listening. And not just that particular bit, but any bit that you have a feeling that, oh my gosh, this bit for some reason is not working, or it may be offensive in some way to somebody. Sure. If you have that feeling, even though it gets a big laugh, yeah, it's time to take it out.
Absolutely. I get consent all through the show. I always have consent with everything that I'm doing with my volunteer. That was the one part that you can't get consent. That's the whole point. That's what makes it funny.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. There was a bunch of fan questions, but we've already gone over, I think, most of the things that different people have asked. The one thing I was going to ask about was when you get a volunteer on stage, it's usually a man and you're very flirtatious. Have you ever found a guy that has maybe a jealous wife in the audience or something that makes him not want to do what you want them to do?
The video that I have up on Vimeo, you can see the guy refuses. I have this prop that was invented by Janet McAlpern,
which is really, really funny, and you have to watch that Vimeo. Gosh dang it! It's really funny.
I do it a little like I make them a little different than she does, but it's a coconut bra with the clerk bells on top of them. It's just a very fun, feminine, silly prop. You know, I get a guy to ding them in accordance to a song that I play on a kazoo. Every time the guy will do it, but occasionally a guy will not. Like, I think it's happened twice in the 10 years that I've been doing the show that they wouldn't ding it. You know, one of the times I actually have on camera, and that's up on Vimeo, so you can see what happens. But I won't ever force someone to do it. What I have learned to do is just to make sure that it's all consensual, like not just from the guy, but if I can see that the guy is with a date, whoever that date may be, I will ask permission from the date. May I take him? And I don't say it verbally, but I look at them and I point at the guy and I point at the stage and I make the face like, is this okay? In that moment, I can vet whether or not this is going to be okay or not.
Yeah.
And if the woman goes no, and they hold the guy, which has happened, I say, okay, great. And I move on and I try and find another guy. I have it built into my show to always ask permission from all involved that might be upset by me going on a date and falling in love with this person, including the guy. The way that I get him on stage is I have a tie, and the tie I put around his neck and then use it to get him on stage. I don't ever put the tie on the guy's neck. I hold the tie out, and the guy has to put his head through himself.
He has to give his consent.
There's all these physical moments of him being game. If he's not game, then I wouldn't want to put him in any position where he wasn't game.
Right.
And they're almost always game. They're at a show. They're in the front row. I generally only get guys in the front row. People who are in the front row, they understand that might be a part of the deal.
Truly.
Most guys are really awesome. And I've had one experience. It was in Ireland, and I did a show at a cabaret. The guy was really it was funny. He was game, but there was this part of him that was like his eyes were a little shifty, right? And I wasn't sure what was going on. But he was great. When it was time to ding the boob, he was a little nervous about it, which is always funnier. And then he did it, and everyone was happy, and he was happy, but his eyes always were a little shifty, right?
Yeah.
And then after the show, I find out like his girlfriend wasn't sitting with, it was his fiance, wasn't sitting with him at the time. She was apparently like ridiculously hot. Not that necessarily matters to the story, but
but just so people can picture it in their heads.
Yeah, right. It's just fun. I don't know if you want to picture but she apparently later at the bar, because the guy who booked me saw this all happen and he relayed what happened. But the guy saw his fiance at the bar. The fiance had seen him ding my boob and took her ring off, threw it in his face, and stormed off. And and the guy who booked me was like, you did him a favor. Like that if you have a woman who's she was clearly super hot and just really crazy. Not that those two always go together, but sometimes they do. And it's a party, but it's a volatile party.
You're like, hey, no extra charge for that.
Yeah, you're welcome, dude.
I'll be fine. All right, how about you give me a recommended book and we'll get you out of here.
Oh, recommended book. Yes, if you like the feminist, modern feminist theory, I would recommend Unscrewed by Jocelyn Friedman. That was something that I was a book that I found very useful. I'm also currently reading No Mud, No Lotus, which is a great book on suffering and transforming your suffering. Those would be my top recommendations.
What is that one? No mud? No, what is it?
No mud, no lotus.
Cool. Well, thanks for doing my show. That was fun.
Oh, it was so fun. Thanks, John. You're awesome. Thanks for doing all you do to get our community talking and together. That's awesome.
Do you have some social media or something before I let you go?
I'm on Instagram as @Lindsay Benner, LINDSAYBENNER. And I'm on Facebook as Lindsay Benner Variety. You can also look up the Women in Vaudeville has its own page. That's where you can find out about the next shows. And if you're a woman listening to this and you have a great act, please send me. And I look for around 10 minutes. So send me a video.
A lot of women in LA listen to this.
Yeah, great. So
you might be hearing from somebody.
Send me your stuff. I need an act. I need an act from you. So if you have an act, send me an act. If you're in another town and you're passing through Los Angeles, always contact me and I'd love to have you on the show. Oh,
that'd be great.
Yeah.
No, that's a great offer. So send your stuff to Lindsay.
Yeah, and you can email me actually if you go to my website. That's a good way to lindsaybenner.com. It's a good way to find me.
Excellent. And thanks to all my variety artists. If you found this podcast valuable, spread the word. Thanks again, Lindsay, for hanging out. That was cool.
Yeah, thank you.
Now go out and book those gigs, make some money, and have some fun.
That's all for this episode of The Variety Artist, but your journey continues on our website. Go to thevarietyartist.com for more strategies, insight, and resources, as well as show notes on today's guest to assist you in your career. We'll see you on the next episode of The Variety Artist. But until then, go out and book those gigs, make some money, and have some fun.